Hello everyone and welcome to our BeLong event, Building a Safe and Connected Community. My name is Joanne Barnes and I head up Student Disability and Wellbeing at Queen's. We're delighted to be here on campus today as we commence our new academic year, and it is great that you've been able to join us. I want to extend a big Belfast welcome to all of our students, both new and returning, local and international. I would also like to welcome our virtual audience who are joining us via our online streaming platform today. The theme of today's event is community, and at Queen's we are committed to promoting equality of opportunity for all of our students. We want to create an environment that not only values equality and inclusion, but also celebrates the diversity of our students and staff. Student wellbeing endeavours to support all students in their development of safe and healthy relationships. This includes a zero tolerance policy towards any form of discrimination, bullying or harassment. Today's event focuses on building a safe and connected community. Firstly, I want to reassure you that Belfast is a really safe city. It might be a very small city in comparison to where you come from, but we hope that in a short time you will come to call Belfast home and that you will feel that you belong. Before we begin, some housekeeping. Just want to run through a few things for people who are here in our audience in the room. So there are hand sanitizer stations just at the back of the room. There are also toilets out through the double doors towards the back, females to the left and gents to the right. We're not expecting any fire drills today. However, in the event of an alarm sounding, can I ask everyone to leave the building in a safe and orderly manner via the nearest fire exit. Please note today's event is also being recorded to allow us to share the learning with those unable to attend. We would also love it if you could also join the conversation via social media using the hashtag BeLong. We hope you enjoy today. However, if you feel you're affected by anything that is discussed during the event, please reach out for support. We're here for you. If you're here on campus, speak to a member of the wellbeing staff team. They're either wearing black or red tops. And they'll be here to support you. Online, email us at studentwellbeing@qub.ac.uk. Somebody will be monitoring that account all day and will be able to reach out to you. So before we get started, if I could ask you to take out your phone. Normally we wouldn't say that at events, we'd normally be saying please switch off your phone, but we would like you to be able to follow Student Wellbeing on our chosen social media platforms. We run events like this throughout the year and these will be advertised via our social media channels. So you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, and again today if you remember the hashtag for the event is BeLong. Before we get into the streaming of today's video, I'd also like to welcome our panellists who will be up on stage afterwards for a Q&A session. They come from a range of internal and external support organisations. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Emma Barnwell, who is a hate crime coordinator at Victim Support, to Katie, who's our student welfare officer here in the Students' Union, to Aisling, who is a homophobic hate crime advocate for the Rainbow Project, and John Finnegan, who is our safe and healthy relationship advisor for Queen's student wellbeing. We're now going to show a short film that the Caravan Theatre Company have developed. It looks at the issue of hate crime. Ideally, we would have loved the company to travel here to Belfast to perform this live, but unfortunately this wasn't possible this year due to COVID. So they've produced the next best thing, which is a digital recording. As noted earlier, these films all deal with complex issues that may be upsetting for some. First and foremost, please look after yourselves and do not watch if you feel as though this might impact you negatively. If you would like to talk about anything you've watched or about any personal experience, please reach out to us. I'd like to kick off with today's film.
So I was with my husband I think he's next door, actually. Anyway, I like to sit at the front of the bus because, I mean, who doesn't? But there was a guy already sat there. So we were on the top deck on the left-hand side as you walk up, about 8 rows back. Wow, that's quite specific, isn't it? I don't know why I remember that.
You're supposed to have training, but it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, I did have training, but when it's actually happening, you sort of forget everything. I guess I just wasn't as prepared as I could have been. I don't know, maybe I've done all right. It's difficult to tell, isn't it?
I had the phone, I made the video. I don't know what else there is to say, really. I mean, you've seen the video, right? It's pretty straightforward.
My wife Carol made me come. Not that I mind coming, of course. It's just, I'm not sure what help I'll be. We're talking about the thing that happened on the bus, right? It's just, it doesn't seem that big a deal for us to come all this way and have to make a statement. The two guys were drunk and stupid. That's about it. Anyway, I can remember what they looked like, if that helps. I remember what they were wearing. Oh, and it was about midnight on the 62A bus. I could see something was happening upstairs, you know, in the mirror, but it's difficult when you can't hear everything. I could sense something wasn't right up there, but there are other people around, so... Look, I knew something wasn't right because I recognised the men. I should have said something before, but yeah, I know them. Not really well or anything like that, but I've seen them around.
We'd been to the theatre and then for drinks afterwards with friends. Nothing big, just a few drinks.
The two guys were both wearing Nike trainers. One of them had a red hoodie on, the other one had a denim jacket. And they were both wearing dark jeans. And the guy with the red hoodie had a rucksack on. I don't remember any other labels or anything like that. But you must have all this stuff on CCTV from the bus. It must be recorded somewhere. Can't you just use that?
Seriously, you've seen the video. You can hear it for yourself. I don't understand why we have to go through this information again.
You hope with people like that they'll just say their piece, get it off their chest, and that'll be it. But I've seen these guys at some marches. EDL marches. Not that I've been to loads. I went to one once, but it wasn't for me.
To start with, it was just a bit uncomfortable, really. Me and John gave each other a few very subtle, very discreet looks. I could tell he was uncomfortable too. It was all just quite quiet, I suppose, although I could hear them saying stuff under their breath. I'm pretty sure I heard them say, bitch.
She was wearing, God, I've gone and forgotten what it's called. You know, the fully covered thing with the scarf and the thing that makes them look like a letterbox. God, my wife says I can't say that anymore. Well, Boris Johnson can say it, so that's fine. A burqa. She was wearing a burqa. And Adidas trainers.
She was by herself on the top deck, about halfway up. I was a few rows behind. Sam, why we're going over this information again, but whatever. They were the two guys. They were verbally abusive. They were pretty quiet about it, but I could hear them. I'm not going to repeat what they said. No, I'm sorry. Watch the video, you can hear it yourself.
I really didn't know whether I should do anything or not. I didn't want to make the situation worse, but at one point I looked in the mirror and I saw them mouth, "ISIS, bitch!" So I had no choice. De-escalate the situation, that's what they say in the training. Well, how are you supposed to do that when they might recognise you?
It got more than a little uncomfortable though. They got a tiny bit louder and the atmosphere was just, I don't know, it just felt threatening, you know? Like nothing was actually happening though, so that makes it difficult to say something.
I pulled over, I stopped the bus, I went upstairs and I spoke to them. I thought maybe I could nip it in the bud. And there were other people up there too. No one was saying anything, neither were the two blokes. I just said, Is everything all right up here? And there was just a few general murmurs of, yeah. So I went downstairs again. What I didn't want to do was draw attention to what I thought might have been happening and isolate the woman further. I mean, she was just sitting there trying her best to ignore it, so I thought, well, maybe I should do the same.
When the driver came up, I thought, well, maybe I should pipe up and say something, but John nudged me to stay quiet, so I did. I didn't say anything. I heard their comments and I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Not just because of John, but, well, I was scared to, what's the expression? To put my head above the parapet.
One of the blokes did seem pretty drunk, but he was quiet when I went up there. Neither of them said anything, really.
So the driver comes up and no one says anything, and then he goes back down and they carry on and get more explicit. It was horrible.
At one point, the driver looked at me directly in the eye. I was just trying to stay out of it, to be honest. I mean, those guys were idiots. They just needed to say their piece, then that would have been it.
It's a night bus, so you expect a bit of aggro, especially as a woman, but this wasn't right. And I did want to say something, and in hindsight, I probably should have done. Yeah, it was only verbal, but that counts. That bloody counts.
Although at one point, I did hear them say something about sand rats. And I did think that might be going a bit too far.
So what does it take? For someone to get stabbed?
I feel like me saying something, like acknowledging it, might have helped a bit, but I don't know if it did anything, really.
I mean, the driver tried to intervene, but I don't think he was really prepared. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it was his fault. I just don't think he really knew what he was doing. Honestly, though, it's not the driver's fault that they carried on.
It did get a bit more obvious after the driver went downstairs. I could feel Carol next to me wanting to pipe up and say something, and to be honest, I'm glad she didn't. I mean, it's not our place.
So the driver goes back down, and then the guys start up again, and I mean, you can hear it on the video, right?
Get off the bus! Get off the motherfucking bus!
I mean, that was the kind of shit they were saying. Obvious threats of physical harm to do with her race. This is absolute bull.
I don't really remember what happened next, but she ended up downstairs. I tried to talk to her, but she just wanted to get off. I tried to tell her to report them to you, but she was clearly upset. She just wanted to leave.
I mean, I was going to move closer to her, like move a few rows down, or even sit next to her. I've heard that's a good thing to do, to put her at ease. But she got up and went downstairs.
Plus, it was over now. No harm, no foul. She'd gotten off, and we could get on with the rest of our journey.
Suddenly, she got up and went downstairs. And then it was just me, two guys, and a few other people. It was still really tense, though. Like, they kept on. The guys kept going on about hiding bombs and shit like that. I stopped recording after that point, and they got off the bus at the next stop.
The two men got off at the next stop.
When they got off, me and this other woman had a little look, like a look that really says something, you know? And I do wish I had said something.
I reckon it was a couple of minutes before the two blokes got off.
So, what, did she come forward and make a complaint?
Go back to your own country. That's what they were saying at the end. I know it's a bit off, but maybe she should go back. Just for her own sake.
I mean, she must have made a complaint, otherwise I wouldn't be here.
The two blokes got off at the next stop. They swore at me when they got off and ran off down the road. I don't think they recognised me.
When they got off, they got louder? Screw that ISIS bitch up. I mean, that really shocked me. I have to say, I was relieved they were off the bus. I tweeted the video to you, so did she come forward? Did she make a complaint?
Oh God.
Is she okay? Oh, I knew I should have said something.
Shit. I shouldn't have let them off so quickly. I should have reported it, but at the time I didn't think it was that bad. Bollocks.
What? They went back to find her? God. They went back.
Forms of hate have experienced name calling, the usual faggot, puss, When I've been out with my boyfriend and stuff, sometimes you forget, like in a public place, it's not as accepting to hold hands, to be affectionate.
Another one is go back home where you came from. Well, this is my home. I live here. Where else can I go?
The main experience, my worst experience, was being out on the night out in Braunston Gate with some friends, was leaving the club, getting ready to leave. I'd had a couple of drinks, I was quite merry. This straight lad had said a few comments, me being drunk, not sensing how this situation could have escalated as quick as it did. I said something back. Before I knew it, I was being attacked and at hospital, having to give police statements the days after.
And the verbal abuse just continued. He wouldn't stop talking. Sad thing was, no one said anything.
I think I'm a victim of hate crime because of who I am, what I look like, and just by general lifestyle. I've had people shout oi tranny and fag, every rude name you can think of. If I'm out and I'm approaching a car or my house, I will have the key in my hand a good 20 or more feet before I get to the door, in case I need to make a quick entrance, and I will be totally aware of what's going around me. You tend to be on edge all the time you're out.
So folks, quite alarming statistics to end that short film with. As I mentioned beforehand, we're now going to get into a Q&A session with some panel experts of who are both internal and external to the university. So I'd like to welcome again Emma, who's a hate crime coordinator for Victim Support NI, Katie, who's our Student Union Welfare Officer, and online or virtually we have John Finnegan joining us, who is our Safe and Healthy Relationship Advocate and Advisor for Student Wellbeing, and we have Aisling with us, who's Homophobic Hate Crime Advocate with the Rainbow Project. So you're very welcome, folks. I suppose the first question that I would like to kick off with following that short film is, how safe is Belfast? You know, we see there people are experiencing issues in and around the UK on public transport while out and about with friends. So I'd like to come to Emma, if I can. First of all, Emma, you work for Victim Support. How safe would you reckon Belfast is as a city compared to other cities across the UK?
I would say Belfast is a very safe city. I've been born and raised here and know the city very well. It seems like it shouldn't be when you see videos like that, and that is a reality. That does happen here. I wouldn't say that it doesn't, but I would say that it is a safe city. It's a very well supported city. There's a really good sense of community, I think, in this city, and if something awful does happen to you and you are the victim of crime, there's so much support out there. There's so much help out there. So, you know, bad things happen everywhere, but you can take comfort in the fact that if it does happen, you will be really well supported.
Thank you, Emma. Katie, can I come to you from a university perspective, you know, in terms of on campus, how safe is our campus?
Our campus, I would say, is so safe. I know in my experience of Belfast and being here, I moved up here a couple of years ago as a student, and I definitely have found a home here in Belfast. I have felt welcomed everywhere I go. I feel it's really safe, and I suppose compared to travelling I would do and stuff, Belfast is one of those nicer cities that you really do feel safe here and part of that wider community.
Thank you. I'm going to go now to John, in terms of the supports that Emma touched on. What supports do we have here on campus that if people do experience something, that they can come forward and seek support?
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to reiterate, you know, this is a very safe kind of campus. In terms of support, so we have our online important support tool, which we'll kind of talk about at the end of the session today. So students can log on to that, report and support. So I'm getting a lot of feedback here. So. We also have a team of safe and health relationship advocates, so students can be signposted to the advocates and the kind of receive support. And you see in the panel as well, so we have Emma, I have Ashley, there's 2 other advocates that we would work very close with, and we can signpost students to those relevant organisations depending on what the issues are. And we also have good links with our local groups as well. So there's loads of support both on campus and off campus.
Thank you, John. And Aisling, over to yourself in terms of LGBTQ issues and support available through the Rainbow Project and other organisations out there. Can you give us a little bit of a flavour of what you do?
Yeah, I work alongside Emma, who is the hate crime advocacy coordinator for victim support, and I provide support to people who are victims of homophobic or transphobic hate crime. So that doesn't only include the support through the criminal justice system, it also includes counselling, sexual health, peer support and emotional support. The Rainbow Project is the largest LGBT organisation in Northern Ireland, and we have 2 centres, one in Belfast and one in Derry. We work in conjunction with the other LGBT organisations such as Cara Friends, Here and I, Gender and I, and Gender. Again, provide anybody LGBTQ in Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Aisling. So I know there's a wee bit of feedback going on with our virtual panelists. So Aisling was saying Rainbow is the largest LGBTQ organisation in Northern Ireland, and they've an office here in Belfast and one in Londonderry in the northwest. And they work alongside Emma and Victim Support NI and alongside other LGBTQ organisations, and they offer not just help advocacy support but also advice and guidance on sexual health and other matters. So we often find that as people start to come to university, these are the times where they start to explore self more, their sexuality more. So certainly, you know, approach us internally in the university and we can link you with these organisations. Similarly, you can approach them direct if you've, you know, some people would prefer to have that private, direct conversation. I'm going to cut to another question now, because obviously this is a new way of us doing things. Some people joining us virtually, some people in the room, and obviously that's due to the COVID pandemic. I suppose the next question I'd like to bring up is, how do we build connections during this sort of time when we're supposed to be socially distancing? How do we go about building connections? Because often people are coming to the city for the first time, they need to integrate, they need to make new friends, they need to feel that it is a home to them. So what measures or what steps can they take in these times to make those community connections? If I go to you first of all, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Undoubtedly, it is very challenging, you know, in the pandemic, and we probably need to kind of come closer as a community at the minute. So particularly within the university, like I was saying previously, there's loads of support for both our new students kind of coming on the campus and our existing students, and that's whether through Katie, you know, in the SU and joining kind of clubs and societies, or through our own kind of support services. So, you know, not just student wellbeing, but we have kind of careers. We have learning development service as well. So there's loads of kind of support, as we were saying, both initially on campus but off campus. I think also it's about students kind of building those kind of networks and kind of finding out where they can kind of get their support from. So whether that's their personal tutor or our staff and accommodation, who are fantastic as well. And, you know, they've been really kind of working hard to kind of build that kind of sense of community within our 3 accommodation blocks. So I think for particularly our new students kind of coming into the university for the first time, it is about reaching out and just trying to kind of build those kind of support networks, reaching out, building new kind of friendships. And I do appreciate that it is difficult, you know, in these times, but it's using that technology as well and using those kind of online kind of communities to kind of do that. Our Queen's Sport as well, you know, there's fantastic support within the PEC as well.
Katie, can I come to you now just from an SU perspective? You know, what steps are you guys taking to ensure that people do have the same opportunities to build those connections, to join clubs and societies?
I'm actually so excited to hear this question because it's my chance to talk about Freshers, which is we've been working on for weeks. And I suppose our tagline for Freshers is it is different. But just because it's different this year and it's not what we all would have expected, doesn't mean it has to be bad or anything less than. So we have a whole programme of very exciting events, starting this evening really, and going on for the next 2 weeks, which allows students to engage with each other, to meet each other all in a safe virtual way. So a couple of the main ones that would help students meet new students, connect with each other, would be our Battle of the Bands is tomorrow night. Alongside our Battle of the Bands, which is going to be live streamed and live hosted, will be virtual pubs where students are put into groups together based on interests, and they can chat away and enjoy the night together on Microsoft Teams. So that all is going to be announced properly tomorrow. Then later in the week, and this is my freshers child, is speed friending with tea. So I'm running 4 sessions of speed friending with tea. So just visualize speed dating, but with friends, and you've got a cup of tea with you. It's going to be a really lovely event. It's all going to be on Zoom. So you come onto the call. I'm going to split everybody up into groups of about 4 or 5 people, do that a couple of times, and then you can all be connected up with each other afterwards. So it's a really lovely informal way to get to know people while you're sitting in the comfort of your own home. It's going to be lovely, relaxed, and I definitely recommend anyone comes along. And then afterwards, there'll be opportunities for you to meet up with those people, I suppose, in a social distance safe way, if you feel like that's what you would like to do. So definitely come along to those, and all the information about our Freshers events are on freshersbelfast.com, so please do check them out.
Thank you. Aisling, can I come to yourself in terms of LGBTQ and making those sort of connections? As I said, it's quite often for the first time when people are coming to uni, they're starting to explore their sexual orientation, and how would they, I suppose, reach out and get comfort from others who have maybe been through that journey, who they could learn from?
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary time when you start university, especially if you start university in a new place. And to everybody who is new to Belfast, you're very welcome. For those who are questioning their sexual orientation or their gender identity, don't be afraid to pick up the phone. Give us a call in the Rainbow Project. We offer a range of services such as befriending, where you can meet somebody who also identifies as LGBT, who could be your sort of gateway to the social engagement here in Belfast. We also offer a range of online services for people to meet up. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we're not able to provide any events, so a lot of our services have been moved online. So if you're maybe having some issues, or you're struggling with coming to terms with your sexual orientation or your gender identity, or you just want to talk to someone, please do get in contact with us. We do provide a listening ear service. There is a switchboard number as well, which is run by Cara Friend, where you can just talk to somebody from Belfast about what the experiences are as an LGBT person here in Belfast, and find out about the range of services that we provide. Like I said, we're a small bunch of people here in Northern Ireland, but there is a lot of support and a lot of activities going on there for you to get involved in.
Brilliant, thanks very much, Aisling. I'd like to cut to our audience in the room now, just to see if, just on the off chance that someone might have a question, either pertinent to the film that we've seen or anything that has been discussed here today. If you do, you can just pop up your hand and a member of the team will come over and provide a mic for you to be able to ask. I don't want to put people on the spot too much, but it's also nice to give the opportunity. Anyone? No? All quiet? Okay. I suppose just looking at other questions that I know, I suppose, and I don't want to shy away from controversial issues, but particularly in our press and media at the moment, there is a lot of discussion around the Black Lives Matters movement, BAME community and responses. So I suppose from a university point of view, I'd just like to make comment to that. Queen's is a very inclusive, diverse campus. We have over 4,000 staff and over 26,000 students from a broad section of different cultures and backgrounds. We are very strongly committed to equality of opportunity. We're not complacent in any way. We still think there's work that can be done. And yes, you know, students will come forward and share their experiences with us, and that's how we learn. So if you do have a negative experience, what we want you to do is to share it with us. We also have a number of clubs and societies from international backgrounds where you can go and seek support from other students who would come from the same culture as yourself, to share those experiences and to come together as a bit of a force and a movement. We are setting up a task force across the university to look at the BLM response and really ensure, you know, what priorities do we need to work on, what do we need to identify and address to improve. So we're never become complacent. We're here to learn and take from student experience and staff experience to see how we can do things better. So as John alluded, there is a report and support system here in the university which is targeted at enabling students or staff members on behalf of students to flag concerns around bullying, harassment, hate crime and sexual misconduct. So if you ever have a negative experience, it is your one-stop shop to go to. There's also a lot of articles around how you get support if you feel more comfortable reading about that, maybe than reaching out. You can make an anonymous disclosure. When people do so, that enable us to track trends, so we can then naturally put in, say there's an issue that comes to light in the School of Medicine, we're seeing a number of complaints coming in about the same thing. We can then do targeted bystander intervention training with that school, or you know, a targeted education programme with the student base. So we're always keen to learn and see where we can do things better. So please always speak out. Don't be alone and don't be isolated. I suppose noting back to the video, and I've maybe come to Emma on this, you know, you could see there the people were chatting about maybe what they should have done and maybe not feeling competent to do that or confident, and what if then the limelight gets thrown back onto myself. Emma, and I know we tried to teach people in the skills of bystander. Would you maybe like to come in and have a little chat around how that sort of natural intervention and keeping yourself safe, but also maybe diffusing or de-escalating a situation, how it can be helpful?
Certainly, yes. Like, as you can see from the end of the video there, when it cut to the real life footage, it's a really, really scary situation to find yourself in or be the target of. And I know I've worked on this job for a while, and I know that if I was sitting on a bus and I saw something like that happen, I would feel afraid to come forward. And I think that goes across the board for most people. You want to keep yourself safe, obviously, especially when there's heightened aggression like that. But equally, you want to help people. You don't want to see this happening to people. So the number one rule is don't engage with the perpetrator. Don't talk to them. Don't look at them. Don't engage with what they're saying, because you are putting yourself at risk if somebody's in that heightened state and is attacking somebody else. Don't talk to them. Don't engage with them. It's not worth it. What you do is you focus on the victim. So if you feel safe enough to do this, as the girl suggested on the video, you go and you sit beside them. Or if you feel that you are okay enough to do this, talk to them. Don't acknowledge what's happening, just talk to them. And this is something that it gets taught in harassment around women as well, that if you see a woman, you know, sitting by herself, and if there's maybe a man or somebody else being sort of inappropriate to her, and you can see that she's not comfortable, you go over and you talk to her as if you know her. You might not know her, but that's not relevant, and you just pretend like you know her. Susan, haven't seen you in ages, how you doing? And you'll find that the momentum kind of goes out of the perpetrator a wee bit, and they'll tend to just sort of give up because it's not worth the effort, basically. It's the same with something like hate crime. If you feel like you can, sit beside them, stand in front of them, give them a look that says, I know what's happening to you. There are stages to this. That's sort of step one. Step two is speak to, if you're on a bus or a train or something like this, or public transport, speak to the driver, speak to somebody in charge. If there's a ticket inspector or somebody, talk to somebody in a bit of authority and say, this is happening, because they have the power to help and they have the power to diffuse this situation. And never underestimate a uniform or a lanyard. You know, people who see these sorts of things, they fear authority, because sometimes they are bullies and sometimes they are cowards. So if they see authority coming to them to tell them to stop it, you know, generally they will. You can also maybe come to the victim after the event is over. If you don't feel like getting in the middle of it, if you don't feel that's safe, that is okay. But if you want to go to them afterwards and say, look, that wasn't okay, I'm really sorry that happened to you, you know, are you doing okay? Offer them water. The sort of the natural human response is still okay. don't give yourself a hard time or don't beat yourself up about the fact that you didn't get in the middle of the fray. That's not what we would ever ask people to do at all. But the biggest key thing I think anybody can do to help is to get it reported. So what you'll find is sometimes people won't want to report it. They're just glad that it's over. They've got off the bus, they've got off the train, and they just want to move on with their lives. But what's so key about hate crime is it's not fully dependent on the victim to report it. Other people can report it. So witnesses to the crime, they can all report it. And the PSNI, the Police Service of Northern Ireland, work on what's known as the perception test, which means that if you think that you have become the victim of a hate crime, if somebody has done something to you due to your race, your gender identity, your sexuality, disability perceived or otherwise, if you tell the PSNI, this happened to me because of this reason, they take that and say, that's fine, that's a hate crime. And that's all you need. You don't need to provide any evidence, any proof at all, just how you feel is totally fine. It's the exact same with somebody who witnesses something like this. They can go to the police and they can say, I think that woman was verbally abused because of her race, for example. I think that gentleman was verbally abused because he has a disability. And the PSNI will take that on and say, we will do our best to investigate this. And there's two different categories of this as well. There's hate crimes and hate incidents. So hate crimes are fairly self-explanatory. It's when somebody is the victim of a crime due to something about them. So that's, arson or burglary or assault, the things that we all associate with being crimes. But incidents are sort of lesser things than that. So they're not criminal as such, but they're not something you want to tolerate. And they are motivated by the same hate and fear and ignorance that hate crimes are. So things like that, things like being verbally abused on a bus, or somebody yelling something sort of racist and then running away, or graffiti or things like that. And we would really strongly encourage people to report that to the PSNI as well, because it creates a picture. So if somebody yells something racist to someone and runs off down the street, you're never likely really to catch that person. But if the PSNI know, then they can target areas and they can focus resources, and they can maybe talk to families or communities and see if there's any extra help or support that's needed there. So what I would say though is that you don't have to do all of this directly if you don't want to. It's quite a big thing to take on, and we would never burden somebody with wanting to do that if they didn't. So the key message I would say, if nothing else today, is that if you want to get this reported to the PSNI and you don't feel comfortable approaching the PSNI yourself, don't. That's fine. So the service that I coordinate, the Hate Crime Advocacy Service, I work with all of the advocates who are dedicated to each area to race, and we have Ashton for LGBT, and we have 2 race hate advocates, and myself, I'm the sectarian hate crime advocate. So if something like this happens, if it happens to you or if it happens to somebody else, come and talk to us. Drop us an email, pick up the phone, come chat to us in person, COVID permitting. And we can get that reported on your behalf. So you can phone through to the PSNI if you want, but just know that you or anybody else can report this, and it can get through to the police, and something can definitely be done about it.
Thank you, Emma. So we did have a question in online which pertains to a lot of what you're saying. I suppose I'd like to take it a little bit further, just in closing up. So say, for example, I'm a student and one of my peers is maybe their language and their conversation that they maybe discuss, whether it be around the opposite gender, whether it be around particular race issues, makes me feel uncomfortable. And I think if I was someone in that position, if I identified with that race, culture, gender position, I would feel very uncomfortable. It would be one of those maybe hate incident type things. How do I intervene safely, or who could I report that to, I suppose, to enable me to feel that I haven't been, simply a bystander and not intervened and not queried on it? Because I think it can always be more difficult. It's easier maybe with someone you don't know to report. But if it's one of your peer group and you're thinking, no, their style of language is making me uncomfortable and therefore would make others, how might you go about, I suppose, addressing that and resolving that?
Just talk to them, and it doesn't have to be confrontational. It doesn't have to be a big argument. You can just say, look, that isn't on, that isn't okay, that's not how we talk about people here. And if you want to have a wider conversation about maybe why they're saying things like this, why they hold these sorts of views, do that certainly, but in the first instance, make it very clear that this isn't language that's acceptable. We don't talk this way about people anymore. We are not derogatory to people. We're not mean about people because of, you know, their race or their gender, their identity or disability or anything. And know that sometimes these attitudes come out of ignorance, really. They just come out because people just don't know any better or have never been taught any better and aren't necessarily malicious. Sometimes they can be malicious. Sometimes people can just be mean. But have an open conversation with them first if you can. If they are open and available to it, you know, you direct them to, you know, the Rainbow Project, direct them to the Migrant Centre, and they have all of the resources there so that they can educate themselves and realise that, you know, this university doesn't tolerate racism, this society, this community, Belfast doesn't tolerate things like racism or ableism or things like that, or sexism, and, you know, see what comes out of that. But in the first instance, just a very simple, we don't talk like that, that's not how we talk about these things, and see what comes out of that. If they explode and it gets angry, then de-escalate and step back. But just so long as the message gets to them that this isn't acceptable anymore, this is not okay, it's not jokey banter anymore, then hopefully something will get through. And, you know, hate crime is born of an attitude, is born of an acceptance and a tolerance for these ideals and the way that these people think. And if we stop that immediately, then, you know, it doesn't escalate beyond that.
Thank you very much, Emma. I know we're just closing up now, so I think we're just, thank you to our panellists who joined us virtually as well, to Aisling and to John, and to Emma and to Katie here in the room. I think we're just now going to cut to a final slide just on the support. So just coming back to that, if you do experience anything yourself individually, or you witness someone else, coming back to Emma's point, you know, you don't need to get involved and challenge the perpetrator. It's as simple as focusing on the victim. The key message that we would take away. So intervening, making them feel safe and comfortable and feeling really like they have an ally in that circumstance. And quite often that diffuses the aggression coming from the perpetrator, and will often just mean that they go away, they disappear. But then taking it that next step further with the individual saying, you know, do you want to report this? Do you want me to support you to report it? And then looking at where you can go. So internal to the university, we have the report and support system. We have our Students' Union SAB team who can be there for a listening ear. You can draw on your personal tutor. You can draw on a friend or a classmate. Draw on who you feel you're most comfortable with initially, and then they can take it from there in terms of connecting you with the broader, more formal supports, such as the report and support system, such as Victim Support NI, who can then get you out to the most appropriate advocate for your, I suppose, individual case or individual needs, or for the persons. Then eventually, if you want to take it to the Police Service of Northern Ireland, you can be supported to do so. And as Emma says, they can look into that on an incident basis or actually on a crime basis. So, you know, they will pick up a bit like our anonymous reporting. They'll pick up on trends in social areas, and they'll maybe target resources into schools, to community projects in that area, to try and really quieten down that behaviour and stop it from happening. So you're all very welcome to now join us for our networking event. So we have available the South Dining Hall, which I believe staff are going to show how to exit to. I think it's through these top doors here, and there'll be a number of stall holders and stands where you can pick up information and resources that hopefully will help you keep safe when you're here in Belfast, but also hopefully underline that there are an awful lot of supports out there. As we picked up at the start, Belfast is a very safe city. It has had its troubled past, which we can all talk about, but we're pleased to say that crime rate in Belfast is probably lower than most places throughout the UK. So the likelihood of you experiencing any of these issues is very, very low. But similarly, if you do, it's not to be tolerated, and we can always learn on if it's, you know, just small improvements that you think we could do on and around campus to make things feel more inclusive. Please let us know. Contact Student Wellbeing, contact our Students' Union. We're here to listen, and we're here to take things forward on your behalf as a student base. So thank you very much. Thank you.